Welcome to the talk on pacing from the Chronic Pain Centre. The Oxford Dictionary defines pacing as advancing at an equal rate or a thoughtful and strategic method to optimize efficiency. Now, this concept of efficiency relates to the idea of conserving energy. If you think in day-to-day terms, some examples of conserving energy or pacing could be a long-distance runner. They don't go flat out right at the beginning. They pace themselves. They go at more of a constant rate so that they can finish the race. Similarly, in an assembly line, the product moves along at a slow pace so that each worker can get their bit done, and then at the end of the assembly line, the product is complete. It's efficient. When related to chronic pain, pacing is one of the self-management strategies that people can use to help them to return to doing things that are important to them without flaring their pain. So a self-management strategy is something that they do themselves to manage their pain and still get things done that are important to them. If you graph pain from a scale of 0 being no pain to 10 being worse pain over time, it's the nature of chronic pain that it's going to have its highs and its lows. And for any individual, they're going to have a normal low and a normal high. So they have their sort of normal range of chronic pain. We also know that it's the nature of chronic pain that it's going to flare up. There are going to be periods where it's higher than the normal high of chronic pain. And it's the use of self-management strategies which can decrease the frequency and intensity of these flare-ups. Similarly, the normal range of pain can decrease by the use of these strategies, and pacing is one of the main ones. So, pacing has sort of two definitions. The first concept is that of balancing. So balancing activity with rest, balancing doing light tasks with heavy tasks, but it also includes the concept of planning. So planning ahead to get the most important things done, again, within pain and energy limits. That's the conservation, the budgeting. So let's take an example. If in a day you had these priority activities, you want to vacuum the house, you want to prepare dinner, you can apply the concept of balancing by this sort of approach. You could wash the vegetables while you're standing at the sink, then you could sit down to chop them. Then you could go and vacuum one room, then do a relaxation exercise. Then you could go vacuum another room. Then you could use a tall stool to perch on while you stir fry the vegetables. So you're balancing out how you're using your body and how you're using your energy. Looking at the concept of planning ahead, you would have to plan your meals in advance so that you know what groceries you need to get, and you could plan to do your shopping trip over 2 days as opposed to all at once. You would need to plan ahead to have a tall stool available in the kitchen to perch on for when you stir fry the vegetables, and you'd need to protect some time to do that relaxation exercise. That involves planning ahead. So what about this concept of activity? Activity isn't just how we physically exert ourselves. In terms of your nervous system, it takes energy to do anything, to think and to feel. All those things take energy. So there are physical and mental activities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some concepts that are important to consider with regards to activities. So first of all, beginning with physical activities. It takes less energy to sit to do something than it does to stand. It takes less energy to push something than it does to pull something. And it's harder to do an activity when you have a load added to your body. We all carry around our body weight all the time, but we're not very aware of that. When you add a weight to it, that makes it more challenging for your body to work. So what about mental activity? The cognitive model tells us that what we think leads to how we feel and what we do. We know that it's important to pay attention to signs from our body as well. So this paying attention is thinking, because this allows us to respond to signs from our body that we might be getting tired or that pain might be increasing, things like increased muscle tension, changes in our breathing. I'm going to get back to these concepts of thinking and feeling when we talk about approaches to activity, because they're all related. It makes sense. When we do things, when we're active, it takes energy away from us. And the harder or the longer that we are active, whether it's physical or mental, we use more energy. So what replenishes energy? A whole bunch of things. You might have thought of rest, but I've put that at the bottom of the list because there are other things that also help to rejuvenate us. Things like therapeutic relaxation, imagery, abdominal breathing, stretching. How about doing something that's enjoyable to you? Eating, sleeping, just changing your attention. You've probably heard of the phrase, a change is as good as a rest. It's true. It helps to refocus your attention, and it is energy boosting. Then, of course, there is rest. We define rest as sitting or lying down with your feet up. When your feet are on the floor, typically you're engaged in an activity. It's more restful to have your feet up. Switching your attention to an activity that has different mental demands is also resting. So the concept of micro breaks is that you would take a very brief break from a sustained position. So for example, if you were stooped slightly over a sink washing some pots, a micro break from that would be to put down what's in your hands and to stand up for a second and then go back to doing your pots. That's a micro break, and it's refreshing. It's restful. This concept of tolerance for activity is important. It's an awareness of how long or how much of an activity you can do, or a series of activities that you can do, until you notice a change in your pain. In this lecture, I'm going to speak to the concept of tolerance with regards to your approach to activity. And to begin with, I want to orient you to this graph. So your activity level from low activity up to high activity is on this axis, and time is on this axis. So this dotted line represents this person's tolerance to activity. They're able to do things up to that level, but when it reaches that level, that's when this person gets a noticeable increase in their pain. So now I'm going to explain these different approaches to activity that people may take when they have chronic pain and refer it to tolerance. So a person who takes a do it no matter what approach to activity does as much as possible. They aim to get the activity done. The focus is on the activity, and as a result, they wind up pushing through their pain in order to get the task done. Remember, we talked about our thoughts leading to our behaviors. So these are the types of things that might be going through a person's head when they're pushing through an activity. Take a look at those and see if any of them relate to you. Other people are depending on me. Bribing yourself, I'll rest when I finish this, or I'm just going to feel more pain when I stop, so I'll just keep going. Sound familiar? Remember, our thinking leads to our feeling, and if you're thinking those things but you're getting an increase in pain, you're likely to experience some of these negative emotions. And what about function? Function is our ability to do things. So what we find is when someone takes a do-it-no-matter-what approach to activity, they tend to push themselves really hard and then crash. And over time, the pattern of overdoing it on good days is followed by more and more days with high pain and low activity. So if you were to graph it, it would look like this. Here's the potential tolerance, but the person is pushing themselves hard. So they push, 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 crash. So their activity level is lower. But they have this attitude that they need to get the job done. So they push and crash. And over time, the crashing becomes longer and lower. And in the end, the tolerance level also lowers. The polar opposite approach to activity is a person who may wait until. That's a person who is resting or waiting, hoping that the pain will go down before they exert themselves, before they do an activity. Remember, physical or mental. And there are specific activities that they'll definitely avoid because of the increase in pain they anticipate they would cause. So this is the type of thing that might be going through a person's head who's waiting until. What if I cause more damage and make my pain worse? Or if I can't do it like before, what's the point in doing it at all? Again, these are natural thoughts for a person to have, but they lead to low activity levels. And even with low activity levels, when you have chronic pain, the pain's going to be there. So that leads to negative emotions. When you're thinking these things and you have pain, you may experience some of these. Fear is a very predominant emotion when a person is waiting to feel better before they do something. And that relates to the whole purpose of our pain system, to alert us to the potential danger that we may be experiencing. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for people when they have chronic pain, to know how much is enough and how much is too much. What about functioning? So your ability to do things when you're taking a wait until approach to activity. So what we know is that over time, if you're not moving and you're fearful, you're going to feel more pain over time. If you think about it, if you're staying still, what's happening? Your joints aren't moving, your muscles are tightening up, and so when you do get up to move, it's going to hurt more. And your brain is going to interpret those messages as dangerous and give you more pain in return. And over time, you're going to lose your tolerance. You're going to lose your cardiovascular fitness, and you're going to have more challenges to being active over time. And this is what's going to happen. So here's the potential tolerance level, but when you're waiting until, you're waiting till you feel better, you're waiting till you feel better, and over time your tolerance is going to wind up right down here. Same place as the do it no matter what. It's important to recognize, I've commented that the people who wait until may be sensitizing their nervous system more by not being active, but there's a similar risk in the people who do it no matter what, because they're always pushing into that pain, and so their nervous system is getting more and more wound up over time, and the brain is going to decide to give them more pain because they're always feeling like it's in threat. In reality, most people take a combination approach to activity. So they'll push through activities that are more important to them, and they'll wait to do things that are less important to them. It's human nature. What we recommend instead is the pacing approach. And I'm going to talk you through these 5 steps. First of all, it's important for you to be able to monitor your pain, to have a system that fits with you so that you can measure change over time. So one way to do that is to use a number scale. So that scale that I introduced earlier, where 0 equals no pain and 10 equals worst pain. But some people aren't comfortable with a number scale, and so they can check in with themselves. When they notice that they get an increase in pain, they can ask themselves this question: am I safe to continue this activity? You know, the person can reflect on, have I done this before? Have I been okay? Yeah, I think I'm safe. But then, if the answer is yes, it's important to ask a second question. If I do keep going in this activity, am I likely to experience a delayed flare-up in my pain? Which is a common experience when people have chronic pain, that they feel okay while they're doing the activity, but later on they get the flare-up of pain. So if the answer to this second question is yes, we recommend that that is the point in time when you need to change your activity to using your body or your mind in a different way. It's very important that you have a sense of what your tolerances are. And again, to remind you that that's how much of, or how many times, or how long you can do an activity until there's a noticeable increase in pain. And in the exercise lecture, you're going to be introduced to a strategy for not only identifying your tolerance, but how to increase your tolerance levels. The next step in pacing is to prioritize activities. And what I think is a helpful exercise to do is, first of all, think about the chunk of time that you're planning for. So for one person, it may be just today. I'm just looking at today. For another person, they may be able to look at a few days or a week. And then make a list of all the things that you have to do, you are expected to do, and you want to do. Don't worry too much about what thing goes on what list. It's just a matter of getting everything down on paper. Also, don't just think short term. There may be a longer term goal or activity that you're working towards, and break that down into, okay, in this chunk of time that I'm looking at, what is the step that I can accomplish towards that long-term goal? And then you prioritize them. You simply number them. This is the most important. That's the next most important. And realizing that the things at the top of your list are likely the ones that you're going to get done. It's the things that are at the bottom of your list that you may need to put more thought into because they may not get done. When looking at this list, consider who might help you with some of these activities. Not taking over the whole activity necessarily, but perhaps helping you with part of an activity. So if I collect the garbage in the house, can someone else take the big bag out to the garbage at the curb? There are some things that are just going to be low priority, and you need to be selfish. You need to think of you in your world. What are your priorities? Cross off the ones that are lowest. You need to figure out your tolerance levels for activities, and I'm going to stick with the same example of washing pots just for consistency's sake. So perhaps you figure out that on average you're able to wash pots for 5 minutes before you get a noticeable increase in pain. But it's a night that you are having a dinner party, and so there's more than 5 minutes worth of pots to do. So the idea when you're planning is to know that you're going to wash for just under 5 minutes, and then you go use your body in a different way, and then you can come back and wash again for just after 5 minutes. So your tolerance level doesn't mean that that's when you stop, period, that activity. That's just the duration that you do it at one time. So that's one of the challenges of pacing, is reminding yourself that even though I'm not finishing this activity now, I can still finish it later. Also, with your self-knowledge of your patterns of pain and energy through the day or through the week, there are going to be better times to do certain activities. So again, on your list, you can write down the best time of day or week for you to do that given activity. In light of that energy conservation part of pacing, I would encourage you to think of alternate approaches to activities. We're creatures of habit. We tend to do things the way we've always done them, but sometimes it's useful to be critical and consider other ways of doing things. So, can I do this activity in sitting rather than standing? Because I know it takes less energy. We recommend that activities switch up about every 20 minutes, particularly if they're stationary, if they involve just sitting or just standing. We encourage people to move every 20 minutes or so, using the micro breaks from sustained position, and then inserting stretches into activities as well. And finally, using tools. So a tool isn't necessarily something like a screwdriver. It could be a mop with a long handle so that you're not having to bend over so much. I'm just going to introduce you to a few basic body mechanics principles as well that are applicable to any physical activity that you do. It is always safest for you to use your arms directly in front of you because that minimizes the amount of twisting that you will do. Working close to your body minimizes the load on your body. Using your hands between shoulder and hip height is the best because our core is the strongest when we're using our hands at those levels. And having a stable base of support, which is basically what you're standing on. So your feet not being together, but about hip width apart and staggered if possible. Gives you the best balance. So here we come to the planning part or the scheduling part of pacing. And it suggests here that you use a calendar, but it really doesn't matter. You can use whatever you want. A piece of paper is fine. The idea is to plan ahead what you're going to do at certain times on certain days. And what you need to do is take your top priority activities and to write them into your schedule and noting the tolerances, so how long you're going to do something. And we know that the definition of tolerance is that's the point at which you get an increase in pain. So when you're planning, you need to plan to stop just shy of that tolerance. Because you're likely doing more than that one activity in a day, and they all accumulate. So you don't want to be pushing yourself into the pain each time. You want to be stopping before you get that increase in pain. And the ultimate goal is that no one day should be more demanding than the next. So if you could measure your energy output, Wednesday would put out the same amount of energy as Sunday. What about sticking to the schedule? Well, remember that graph of pain where we had the normal range of pain. On a day where you start out at the high end of your normal range, I encourage you to still do what you have planned because you've been smart about how you've planned things so that it won't push you into a flare-up. Most people are okay with that. What's more challenging is this next point, is that on a low pain day, so when you're at the lower end of that scale, not to add anything more into your day. And I'm going to suggest some self-talk that will help you to stick to this schedule. Think about if you have a low pain day, but you stick to your schedule, you're more likely to still be in lower pain at the end of the day if you don't add anything in, which means you'll have more energy, probably be in a better mood to enjoy your family or friends in that evening. So using this sort of encouraging or positive self-talk can help you to stick to your plan. Also, we recognize that life happens, right? Unexpected things come up. Sometimes pain flares without anticipation, energy is low, and so you need to have another plan if your pain does go above your normal range. And so rather than canning the whole plan, what we suggest is that you take out the most demanding tasks from the day and reschedule the week so that the priority things are still getting done. So you can't just take out stuff from today and put it on to tomorrow, because you've already planned tomorrow to keep you within your normal pain range. If you put something onto tomorrow, something has to come out of tomorrow. So it does involve rescheduling the rest of the week. But then you know that your priority activities are getting done. So here are some thoughts that can help you to pace. So by pacing, I will be getting the most important things done. By planning ahead, I can get things done without flaring my pain. That way, I am in charge, not my pain. And really, that is very powerful. It's giving you the control back rather than your pain dictating what you're doing. So I thought this photograph of this woman looked very confident, and these are the positive types of emotions that a person can experience when they have successful use of pacing. What about function? What about your ability to do things? Well, what we know with this approach to activity is that people are able to complete the things that are most important to them within their pain and energy limits, and that over time they can increase their tolerance to activity. So looking at this graph one more time, here's the potential tolerance. When you're pacing, you're starting a little below where your tolerance is. But over time, you can gradually increase that tolerance. And again, this is going to be spoken to a bit more in the exercise lecture. And in the end, your tolerance level winds up being higher. You're more productive. You're doing more of the things that are important to you, as opposed to these two approaches to activity, which result in a lower tolerance. So let's give a few more examples. This one is at work. So sticking to the concepts of balancing and planning, balance the tasks at work so that you're alternating between things that are physically and mentally demanding, or things that are more mentally demanding with those things that are less, as much as is within your control. Plan ahead to change your position every 20 minutes, particularly if you are sedentary, if you're staying still. And plan time, put time aside that you have available to put unexpected work into. I know it can be a challenge, but I encourage people to stick to the plan. That means at work not taking on any extra tasks, saying no, asking for help, and having a plan B. What about with recreational activities? Again, these are so important to one's sense of self, and they tend to go out the window when a person is living with chronic pain. The concept of balance can be incorporated into these as well. So this example would be moving from gardening to emailing and going back and forth between those two relaxing activities, which are using your body in a different way. Planning ahead to use the right tool. So in this case, for example, a long-handled hoe. And then sticking to the plan. This is so important, reminding yourself that enjoyable activities are valuable. They help to replenish your energy and to feed your soul. So in conclusion, I would like to reinforce that pacing is an effective pain management tool, and it can be used in all areas of your life. It helps you to save energy while you are still getting the important things done. Thank you.